What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's the Game Week 1 preview. So for anyone that's new around here, this is a video that I do every single game week from Game Week 1 all the way up to 38, discussing the topics and questions that you've put to me, either via Twitter or via YouTube, or just stuff that I want to talk about as well. What I don't tend to do is talk too much about my own team. I will touch on it at times, but there's a whole nother team selection video for that, which you can go and check out if you haven't seen it already. So in this one, I'm just going to go through your questions and topics and also talk about captaincy as well. Before we jump into it, if you find it useful, if it's something you enjoy, please do give it a like. We've got 5,000 likes on yesterday's video already. If we could do that again today, that would be absolutely ridiculous. And of course, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I'd really like to try and get to 100,000 subscribers as soon as possible. And I can only do that with your help. So if everyone that watched this video that enjoyed it, that wasn't subscribed, hit that button, we get it done really quickly. Otherwise, let's jump into this one. Just before we jump into the first question, I just wanted to go a quick reminder about Fanteam. For anyone that hasn't already tried it, make sure you do. The reason I think this is so good for people that like FPL is the scoring system, the rules, even the player prices to a certain extent are extremely similar to FPL, to the point where you can almost take your draft from FPL over to Fanteam, job done, just manage it throughout the season. The best thing is the prizes, €200,000 guaranteed for first place. In total, there's €1 million up for grab. It is 18 plus, it is €25 entry, but I think a lot of people probably spend that on mini leagues and stuff anyway, so it's not too bad to try and do that to win 200 grand. So if you want to check it out, I've got my own sign up link in the description below. Make sure you use that one, and good luck. So as always, going to go through the topics that I've got on screen and obviously switch them as we go. So the first thing I wanted to talk about in general is do not panic. I'll tell you what's going to happen between the time you watch this video and the Game Week 1 deadline at 11 o'clock on Saturday. You're going to panic. You're going to take players out that haven't left any of your drafts all pre-season. For me, like if I started taking out Salah, Aubameyang, Werner, they're players that have barely left any drafts. Why do I suddenly want to do that now? You're going to start thinking about players to own because you're worried that they're going to do well. If you're that worried, why were they not a consideration? That's the thing to kind of tell yourself and ask yourself. There's lots of players that are probably going to do well that I don't own, for example. There's only a squad of 15. You can't own everyone. You can't be fearful of picks you haven't made. There's probably a good reason why you've not done that. If you've completely overlooked someone and suddenly there's new information or something like that, then yeah, maybe you can change your mind. Like no one's sitting here, I'm certainly not telling you absolutely cannot change your mind, but think about why you're doing it. Why have you made all those drafts? Why have you made all those selections? Try and not look at too many other people's teams because you'll always have fear of missing out. I've even seen some people say to me, I'm worried about not owning Calvert-Lewin. Now, I think he's a good option. I've had him in my team for a little while. I'm not saying he's absolutely essential. Everyone should own him. If you don't think he's a good buy, don't buy him. Simple as that. So try not to panic. And most of all, if you are changing your mind, ask yourself why. Is there a good reason to be changing your mind at this point in time? Playing bench, lots of questions about this, as well as £4 million defenders. Obviously, with everything going on with COVID-19 in particular, I mean, this gets discussed every year. How much should we have on our bench? But even more so this year because of everything that's going on. We've seen some players that are having to isolate and stuff like that. How much will that happen throughout the season? My gut feeling, my initial instinct is, I'm not going to panic about this. I'm not even going to have a playing goalkeeper on my bench. I know the risks with that. If my goalkeeper misses out for whatever reason, I'm either playing with no goalkeeper or having to make a transfer. But for me, I just think the chances of that happening are so slim. Why would I worry about putting more money on the bench for someone that I don't want to play most weeks? Now, if you had two £4.5 million playing goalkeepers, that's the strategy you want to do. Nothing wrong with that. If you want to rotate, absolutely do it. But I just don't think I'm going to bother having that. And the same with the other players on the bench. Like if I had a 4.5 million defender, a 4.5 million midfielder, I would be okay with that. Think about how often we've had to use all three players on our bench in a single game week. It does happen. I'm not saying it never does. But it's very rare. And the thing you've got to consider is how much extra money you're going to put on the bench and how could that money have done better for you in your first 11. If it's sat on the bench most of the time, it's not getting you any points, right? Only that certain time when you have to use all three bench players. So for me, 4.5, a 4.5 mid, 4.5 defender, and maybe even a 4 million defender. I'm okay with that. Maybe it'll be the wrong decision. We've got wildcards and stuff that we're going to use at some point before Game Week 16. Then we can rectify things like that if it looks like it's a bad decision. But right now, I'm not seeing too much reason to kind of sway from there. In terms of 4 million defenders, it's looking pretty slim pickings right now. Mitchell at Crystal Palace will probably play maybe the first 1, 2, 3 games. We don't know, basically, because we don't know how long Van Aanholt's out. But I'm pretty confident that he is now kind of first choice backup, I guess, to Van Aanholt. Mitchell, that is. So if you need someone playing in the first few games, he's probably your best bet. The way I'm going to go is probably put Ferguson in from Crystal Palace, who's injured, with the hope that when he is fit, he will be the number one playing defender. There's other ones that people are looking at. Branthwaite for Everton, just don't see him playing. Looks like they're going to sign Tomori. Even with Holgate out, there's still players like Mina there and Keane as well. So I just don't see where Branthwaite fits in. Burr at Wolves, like they haven't signed a new right wing back to replace Doherty, but Traore could play there. There's no guarantee that Burr will play there. I'm not really confident about him at all. So it's really Mitchell versus Ferguson, unless we get some kind of inclination that Johnson's going to play for West Ham. It's not looking that good. In terms of defences where it's a bit all over the place as well, you've got Wolves defence. So straight away, when it first started, I was like, ignore Bolly, 5.5 million, no point going for him. Get Size, 5 million. Get Vinagre, 4.5 million. And now the waters are quite muddy because Doherty's gone. I don't see that as a huge issue for defensive returns. Now, there's all this speculation that Vinagre is going to be sold, that Tellez is going to come in, who could be a great buy, but we don't know how much he is. So now I'm kind of a little bit not worried about the Wolves defence. I still think it's going to be a good defence. It's going to keep plenty of clean sheets. I just don't know which player to go for. They've sold Marcel, or bought Marcel, I should say. Hopefully I've pronounced that right. Marcel, I'm not sure. Now, a lot of people are saying he can play left centre-back, which puts Sice at risk, because at the end of the day, Cody and Bolly are not going to miss games. So it is just Sice there. But when I had a look, he's mostly played as a left-back. So either he's there as backup to Vinagre, or he's going to play instead of Vinagre, or if Tellez comes in, he'll be back up to Tellez. I don't see that he necessarily comes straight into the team just because they bought him. A 31-year-old, only cost a couple of million, pretty good, squad player, right? So I'm not hugely worried about that. I still think Sice did enough last year that until we hear anything else, we should just assume he's still first choice. So I still like him for 5 million. Tellez will be a great buy, depending on how much he comes in at. We'll have to wait and see. But in terms of other players, like the only reason I would go for Bolly still is as a placeholder for another 5.5 million defender down the line. The problem I have with Cody is zero attacking potential. He almost I don't think he ever even goes in the box, let alone has a shot in the box. So you're really just looking for those 6 pointers, which isn't necessarily a bad thing for 5 million. But I'd rather try and go for Sice with maybe a little bit more attacking threat. I know Cody outscored Sice last year, but he also played more minutes as well, which is one of the reasons. So Sice is still in for me currently. Vinagre, if he stays, is such a good option, as we know. I've talked about him a lot in pre-season. But right now, the speculation is getting a little bit worrying, where we're probably going to have to rethink. Like, if your whole setup depends on Vinagre playing, I would have a think about how you can change that, because there's nothing to say that these transfers won't be made by the rest of the week before the game week deadline. So you don't want to be going into Saturday thinking, oh God, I've not got Vinagre now. How am I going to replace him? I'm going to have to restructure my whole team. You should really be thinking about that now. Like when I make my drafts now, I'm basically doing it without Vinagre in the team. I'm just going to assume he's not going to be an option. If he is, perfect. I just slot him back in easy enough. But if he's not, I've got other plans to do. Let's talk about Mo Salah's form and Mane for a bit as well. So I keep seeing Salah's out of form. He hasn't been good since post-lockdown. The eye test, he hasn't looked good in pre-season. And I'm just not sure where this has really come from. Like, pre-season, okay, fair enough. But the thing is, those same managers that are saying he's not looked good in pre-season will be the same ones telling you should ignore pre-season form. Like, people pick and choose how they use pre-season form. Like, everyone telling me Calvert-Lewin hasn't scored since post-lockdown. Well, he scored 2 goals in pre-season. Does that make him good? Salah scored plenty post-lockdown in terms of attacking returns. Just because he hasn't scored pre-season, does that make him a bad option? The Community Shield, right? I will say it. I didn't see it. I was out. I didn't bother watching it afterwards. Looking at the stats, Liverpool were just over 2 expected goals. Arsenal were just under 1. So if you're looking at the stats side, you could say maybe Arsenal were a little bit lucky and Liverpool had the better chances. On another day, they may have won instead. Now, I don't know how involved Salah was for that, but that's just one game. And some people would say that's not even a proper competitive game. I'm sure it was played like that by the players. But you know what I mean. A lot of this is being based off pre-season plus 1 Community Shield game. So I had a look at this post-lockdown out of form. Because a lot of people saying between game week 30 and 38, he didn't play well or whatever. But I've had a look. 7 games he started. He was benched for game week 30 and he was benched but came on in game week 38. But 7 games in between, he had 7 attacking returns, 3 goals, 4 assists. His blanks were versus Man City, Arsenal and Burnley. So not the worst teams to blank against, I would say. And obviously the last game was against Newcastle. He came on for 26 minutes. So I wouldn't say that's out of form, right? I think I worked it out. That's about 5.8, 5.9 points per match for the 7 games he started. That's not even taking into account bonus points. Of course, if there's any yellow cards, that will come off a bit. But it's still a pretty decent return. Now, you could say that's not good enough for 12 million. But the thing you get with him is someone you know is going to do well. When was the last time he had a bad season for Liverpool in the last 3? He hasn't. He's had 3 good seasons. Now, I would just want to say, before anyone comments below, I am not trying to convince anyone to get Mo Salah. There's lots of people that have strategies where going without him means they can get like a Rashford and a Havertz instead of, Salah and Saint-Maximin. Fair enough. If that's the way you want to do it, go for it. They could score more points. I'm not going to sit here and say 100% they won't. But if you're not getting him simply because you think he's out of form, I think it could be a bit of a shock, basically. So I just don't see how that's happened. Pre-season, fair enough, right? It would be nice if you were scoring goals in pre-season, don't get me wrong. But it's a totally different time when the league starts, right? So I don't think he's been out of form for a long time, basically for 3 seasons. You could look at the opening fixtures and say they're not that great, and he's 12 million. If you're not going to captain him, then you could get rid of him. Absolutely, fair enough. Again, if you want to do that, that's your strategy. You absolutely should. I just don't think it should be based on the fact that he hasn't scored for a while, because post-lockdown, when Liverpool basically had nothing to play for, he's still got 7 attacking returns and 7 starts. So I think Leeds at home, depends how well you think Leeds are going to do, but that could be a good fixture. I think in Game Week 6 and 7, they got Sheffield United at home, Villa at home, even Arsenal at home in Game Week 3. He could get something there as well. Now, you have to look at who else you're happy to captain within those first 7 weeks. Like the first 2 weeks, it could be Aubameyang, in which case, yeah, you don't need him for the first 2 weeks, maybe Mo Salah, that is. But I think this whole out of form thing, the narrative is not fair on him. In terms of should you go for Mane instead, look, I've talked about this a lot. Same price, I'm always going to go for Salah at the start. But slowly over the last 3 seasons, in terms of big chances, Salah's stayed around the same, but Mane keeps going up and up and up, to the point where last year, him and Salah both had the same amount of big chances. It was 29 each. So he's still, and that happened in the last couple of seasons, right? Salah shoots more, but in terms of quality chances, Mane gets just as many, pretty much. And last year he did, so he's an option too. But if they get a penalty, Salah's on it, it's easy points. So that's where I'm going, while they're the same price. Should you absolutely 100% have to have a Liverpool midfielder in your team? Absolutely not. But this whole out of form thing, I'm not buying it. Man United and Man City strategy has been talked about ever since that blank was announced, basically, for both teams. So a lot of talk about this, and obviously people are asking me again. So Man City, right, they're a team where I would love to get more than one attacker for them. Absolutely. They're going to score the most goals this season. I don't think even Chelsea or Liverpool can probably come that close to them. They might get fairly close, but Liverpool are probably going to score the most goals again. So I would love to have players from that attack. But as we know, they're rotation risks, right? If Mahrez played a lot of games, which maybe he will this season, 8.5 million, absolute bargain. If Foden gets good minutes, absolute bargain at 6.5. So I'll look at them, but I don't currently have a plan to get them in. The one I do is the same as everyone else. Aubameyang to De Bruyne or Aubameyang to Sterling. Probably De Bruyne if I think he's on penalties. That'll be my strategy in Game Week 3. So that's kind of covered. I don't really see a reason to start with Man City. A blank and Wolves away is not a good start to the season for anyone, even Man City. So I'm waiting until Game Week 3. With Man United, right, let me say this. I do not think that Man United players are bad picks, right? Last year I really wanted them, got a bit of stick for it. This year I'm saying I don't really have a plan, also getting a bit of stick for it because everyone thinks they're now essential. The difference is they've gone up in price, right? It's no longer 7.5 for Martial or whatever he started at, 8 million for Fernandes. It's now 9 million, it's 10.5. So you have to compare them to players at the same price. For $1 million more, I can get Sterling or Kevin De Bruyne instead of Bruno Fernandes. For 1.5 million less, I can get Son. Now, I'm not saying that Son will 100% outscore Bruno Fernandes, but there is some kind of merit to maybe starting with Son and seeing how it goes. Maybe I need to spend 0.5 more to get Rashford. I'm not saying Bruno Fernandes is a bad player. I'm not saying he can't get points without penalties. But let's be honest, without the penalties, he's not as good an option. Now, it's Man United. We've got 14 penalties last year, 12 the year before. Could be a similar amount. Could be really low. I don't know. I know what kind of effect, at least on the eye test, Bruno Fernandes had. Interestingly, the numbers show that Bruno Fernandes didn't really have any effect. But I think we can all see from watching the games, he did have an effect on the way the team plays. Much better with Pogba in the team. Greenwood, Martial, Rashford is a great front three as well. So we are going to score goals. And Crystal Palace at home is a great fixture. So again, not telling anyone not to get them, but to get them in, like when I think about my team, it's difficult. I'd have to swap Salah to Bruno Fernandes. Maybe that's a good idea for the, maybe, I don't know, game weeks 2 to 4, or maybe even 2 to 5, and then look to bring Salah back for game week 6 and 7 when he's got 2 home games. That could be a strategy you employ. Personally, I'm not really looking at using too many transfers early on to take out Mo Salah, but I think he's going to have another good season. So straight away, trying to get a £10.5 million Man United player when I'm already struggling to get extra 0.5s out of my team is difficult. So I guess overall, right, again, not trying to talk people out of it, if you want to start with a Man United player on the bench, I don't think it's a big issue depending on who you're playing instead. Whether it's Greenwood, Rashford or Fernandes or Martial, whoever it is, I actually think it's okay. As long as you've got like a £4.5 million playing defender, it saves the transfer. The more exciting way, of course, is to maybe have an Ings or have a Son with money in the bank, try and get a huge amount of points in Game Week 1, at least fingers crossed, and then bring in the Man United player. And if you need to make an additional transfer, maybe you take a hit and hopefully you've gained enough points from the likes of Ings to warrant that anyway. So again, Man City, I'd love to own more than them. They're very expensive, so it'd probably be De Bruyne or Sterling in Game Week 3. I don't see a reason to get them for Wolves away. And Man United, look, yeah, if you want to go for them, I don't see any harm benching them, or you just bring them in Game Week 2. Just go for it. Have a placeholder. Job done. When to wildcard. So every year I have the same answer, right? I just wing it. Right, I don't like setting up a strategy where I have to force myself into wildcard. Ultimately, I'm trying to manage my team to be good throughout the whole season. It doesn't always happen, of course, but that's the way I'm trying to do it. And then I wildcard when I need it. Now, with everything that's going on in the world right now, and obviously the kind of winter break and stuff, and we've got to use the wildcard by Game Week 16, I will try and hold it as long as possible. I'm not sitting here saying I'm going to use it in Game Week 4, Game Week 5, Game Week 6. But if I need to use it, I will use it. One thing I'm 100% not going to do is set my team up for Game Week 1 and then wildcard in Game Week 2. We will not have enough information, in my opinion, after one game week to warrant using a wildcard. And also, we won't even see Man City and Man United play before you have to bring their players in. I get it. We're all expecting them to do well, but I'd like to see them first. Where does all the new signings fit in, like Van der Beek or Van der Beek, I think it is, for Man United? So it's an interesting thing we have to kind of wait and see. Obviously, if he suddenly becomes an option because he's playing more advanced, $7 million's a bargain. Who's going to put him in their wildcard team? Absolutely no one. They're going to wait until they're played. So I'm not setting up for a Game Week 2 wildcard, but I'm not ruling out like a Game Week 3, 4, 5 if my team needs it. But hopefully, I'll nail it in Game Week 1 and I won't need to. Double up or triple ups. Everyone always asks, should I double up or triple up? Is it a bad idea? Is it risky? It depends on the players, right? I see people worrying about kind of double or triple Southampton, but if you've got like McCarthy and one attacker, what's wrong with that? You're back in the defence, you're back in the attack. If you think that's okay, then go for it. Triple ups and stuff in attack can work. We saw with Man United end of last season it does. I think a City triple up at some point, a Chelsea triple up at some point could work. The one thing I would say is if you're not 100% sure who are the best picks right now, try not to lock yourself in. We saw end of last season when I had Maguire, that really hurt me not being able to get Greenwood or Rashford. Having to make 2 transfers. So maybe not locking yourself in as early is probably a good idea. Maybe go for a double up instead of a triple. And obviously, I don't think we're going to be in a situation where a whole team has to kind of start self-isolating, but it could happen, I guess, in which case you've suddenly lost 3 players. But ultimately, I don't have an issue. Double or triple up. If you think those individual players are good enough, why not go for them? 4.5 and 5 million defenders. Lots to talk about them. When it first launched, everyone going 4.5 million defenders, and a lot of talk about 5 million. Now some people going back to 4.5. Let's just say, I don't think there's too many standouts because I think they've all potentially got issues, whether it's fixtures, not guaranteed to play, not guaranteed to play in the future. And so it is difficult about which ones to pick short term. I still think the 5 million slot has got a bit of value. Luke Shaw, okay, not a huge amount of attacking returns, but 5 million for one of the best defences in the league last year with good fixtures. That's why everyone's going for their attackers. Could be a decent option. Obviously, would have to bench him in Game Week 1. I think Davis potentially at Spurs. The only thing about Spurs is their defence wasn't great last year, even with Mourinho. There's all this talk about Mourinho, parks the bus, has good defensive teams. He hasn't done that with Spurs, and there's nothing really to say. I mean, Doherty coming in potentially could help a little bit, but we don't know that for sure. So Davis could be okay given the fixtures, but even playing, I think it's Everton and Southampton first 2 games, that puts me off a little bit, because I think they're both teams that could score goals. So that's a little bit worrying. I still think Saiss is great at Wolves. I don't really have an issue with him unless you really think he's not going to play. And then with the 4.5 million defenders, it's like, Justin, is he going to be nailed after a few game weeks? Obviously, you got Taylor, but he blanks the first week. John Joe Kenny at Everton could be a steal. Is he 100% the first choice right back now instead of Coleman? We just don't know. Lamptey, is there going to be a little bit of rotation there? Because there are backups too. You could go for Webster instead at Brighton. I could list off all the players, but they basically all have their issues. I think you just go with the ones that you think are going to play the most. Like Kyle Walker-Peters, for example, he's going to be nailed on at Southampton. So if you've got a different goalkeeper, I probably wouldn't double up on Southampton defence. I just don't know if it's that good. I think Kyle Walker-Peters could be a good option. But I'm still of the opinion that the 5 million, if not right now, at some point it's going to be good value. Like Tomori, it's probably going on loan to Everton. That's 5 million buy. one of the centre-backs that plays alongside, I would assume, Thiago Silva first choice, is going to be 5 million at Chelsea. Reece James, if he gets the nod, 5 million at Chelsea, another good buy. So that I quite like the 5 million price point to then move players too. But if you're not convinced by the 5 millions, I'd probably just spend if you don't want to go big at the back, of course, then I would just spend them on 4.5s and put that money in attack instead. I don't think the 5s are so good. You can say they're massively better than the 4.5s. I think there's a lot of things that have to work out before that's the case. But I quite like Shaw. I still like Sice. There are some good 5 million options for sure. New signings, the last thing. So their impact. Should you go for a new signing? How will they affect the team? Like, I think a lot of people kind of put off by players like Havertz and Werner because they're new to the league. But I think for every kind of player that people will list to say has done badly when they joined, you could probably list a player that's done well. So Salah, Liverpool, done great for 3 seasons. Fernandes, Man United, came in, looked good. Hazard at Chelsea, I think was pretty decent when he started. He certainly was for the rest of his career there. And then Aubameyang at Arsenal also did well. So there's no reason the likes of Werner and Havertz can't come in and just hit the ground running. Obviously, yeah, we don't know about rotation, where they're going to play, and that could be a little bit of a risk. We know Werner's pretty much going to play because he's had a good pre-season. Players like Havertz, we don't know how many minutes will they get. So you could be put off by some of those players. And looking at other teams as well, like Everton, right? I suddenly like Lucas Digne. I really like Calvert-Lewin. They've got James Rodriguez now, Allen, Decore. They're 3 really great signings. Will they all be fit to start? How quickly will they gel? That's one of the things you've got to ask yourself. Are you prepared to risk it? I'm prepared to get Calvert-Lewin because I was pretty much ready to do that anyway as soon as they made any signings. If you're unsure, okay, don't get him. Maybe get him in a few weeks' time. See how they kind of all slot in first. I don't think you can blanket say that new signings are bad or new signings are good or that they take a while to bed in because sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You've got to make your own opinions. Newcastle, for example, they were trying to attack a bit more last year towards the end of the season, 4-2-3-1. Well, they've just signed Wilson and Jamal Lewis for defence and Fraser as well. Surely that's got to improve them attacking-wise. How much? We'll have to wait and see. But that would make me a little bit more excited about owning their players than before those transfers came in. It doesn't mean I'm rushing out to buy them, but I don't think it would put me off either. So I wouldn't worry too much about new signings. Have a think about the individual player themselves plus the team. So someone like Werner I think looks great. Havertz, maybe because he got here a little bit later and we don't know exactly where he's going to play and who's going to get rotated. Is Pulisic injured and stuff like that? Maybe you'd be a bit more wary about a player like him. So on these videos, I like to keep the captaincy pretty simple. I don't delve into a huge amount of stats and stuff. It's just kind of almost what I'm thinking about the players and the fixtures. So talking about the ones that aren't on the screen, I think Spurs versus Everton have potentially got okay attacks. And I wouldn't necessarily trust either of their players from those teams as captaincy options. West Ham versus Newcastle, by the way, Antonio could be great for playing Newcastle. That's a team that I would definitely target. So as an outside punt, it could be good. And Palace versus Southampton, again, Palace's defence hasn't been decent for a while. So Ings could be a nice outside captaincy option as well. So for those of you thinking different, maybe those fixtures. I think the 4 on screen are the main ones. Let's talk about Brighton versus Chelsea first. So for me, as much as I've got Werner and I'm quite excited about Chelsea, I do want to see him play a couple of times. I think Brighton away and Liverpool at home are kind of perfect time to see how they gel, see how they play, see where the players play and stuff like that. And then maybe we start looking at captaining them from game week 3. So I don't think it's a bad option to go for someone like Werner, but he wouldn't be for me. I'd probably wait till game week 3 and then reassess and maybe start captaining them if he's as good as we all think he might be. West Brom versus Leicester. Newly promoted side, always happy to captain a player against them. So Jamie Vardy could be a decent shout if you've got him. Again, if you want to go a little bit different, most people are going to go for Salah, Mane or Aubameyang, I would say, this week. I think Vardy could be a good option. The only thing that puts me off is like this toss-up with the numbers didn't actually change that much when all the injuries and suspensions happened. They were still creating chances. They still created a lot of good quality chances for the likes of Vardy. You know, when Ricardo was out, when Maddison was out. But at the same time, I think they're starting the season fresh now. He hasn't done that well for a little while. Maddison is still out. He looks like he's going to miss the first game week. That will probably be enough for me to put me off captaining him. I still think owning him could be okay. But there's just too much going on at Leicester, which I think would put me off. They just haven't been great for a while. And that's where sometimes you've got to look at the numbers and just think, actually, no, I don't necessarily agree. And I think Maddison being out is, you know, he is their creative force there, right? And that's going to be a problem. So not for me. The two main options really are Fulham versus Leeds, or Liverpool versus Leeds, and Fulham versus Arsenal. So right now, I think between those two attacks, right, I still think newly promoted sides, you don't know how they're going to fare in the Premier League. But I think even I can see that Leeds, very good defence, very good attacking wise coming up. One of the best sides from the Championship to come up in a while. So it could be a problem for Liverpool. But of course, Liverpool are playing at home, and they usually do very well at home despite who they're playing. So I don't see a huge issue with captaining a player against Leeds, despite how good Leeds might be, because Liverpool are obviously that step above them. So Salah or Mane, decent options. I've kind of already touched on this video which of those two I prefer. If you've got Mane, again, no issues with captaining him. I don't think he's a much worse option than Salah by any stretch. I think for me, I'm going to go Aubameyang. It's away, which is a little bit disappointing. Much better if he was at home. But against Fulham, like, I'm not saying they're the same Fulham that was up a couple of seasons ago, but I definitely think they're going to be one of the teams that concedes the most goals this year. Potentially, you know, sometimes we see, like everyone was saying how good Norwich were in the opening game last year. They still conceded 4 goals, no matter how they wanted to play and how they did play against Liverpool. They still conceded 4. And so for me, I'm kind of looking at Aubameyang as the number 1 choice. I still think Salah or Mane are decent, but Aubameyang is the standout. There's a few different options if you want to go a little bit different. But sometimes it's not worth going different. I know Aubameyang's going to be the most captain, and it doesn't put me off at all. It's a great fixture to open up the season. So that's it for this one. If you have enjoyed it, please do give it a like. Trying to hit those 5,000 likes, which would be absolutely ridiculous to do that 2 days in a row. But with your help, we can do it. If you agree or disagree or with anything I've said, or if you've got another question, please do leave a comment below. I'll try and get back to as many as possible. And if you haven't already, go and check. Have you hit that subscribe button? Have you been enjoying my content in pre-season or even last season? Just never hit the button. If you haven't, please do consider doing it. Hit that notification bell as well. That'll let you know when the next video is going live, as well as the live streams. And lastly, if you want to support me and the channel a bit further, you want a bit of extra content, you want Slack access, WhatsApp access, all that stuff, there's a link to Patreon in the description below. And there's also a link to Phantom. If you've not already checked it out, like I said, €1 million worth of prizes. Give it a go. €25 entry, 18 plus. My sign up link is in the description below. Otherwise, I'll catch you for another video. Thanks for watching. See you soon.